Hey everybody, what's up? Just Aaron here, Question Period Canada. In case you're just like me and closed your eyes for a few years and wasn't paying attention to federal politics, opened your eyes to realize things are not good in our country. Things have gone downhill. So far, I'm not one to abandon hope, but man, I've been paying very close attention for a few months now, very close attention, and it seems sinister what is going on in our government. I've known since I was a child that politics is a crooked game, but man, these days, the stakes are so high, you feel it in your day-to-day, don't you? Like, look at your bank account. It's different than it used to be. It used to be much less uncomfortable. Until very recently, I never would have thought that keeping my house at the temperature that is comfortable or eating healthy food would be luxury items. Like, it is luxurious to turn the heat on. It is luxurious to eat healthy food these days on my budget. It was never like that before. It's changed so much. I'm not saying that we should lose hope or give up hope or, think there is no future, but the way that it's going, it's got to change if we are to have a future. I'm a bit of an anarchist by heart. Just do unto others, the golden rule should work. This form of government is not using the golden rule. That brings us back to the hopeful part. I do have hope for change, and it looks like in this country that change is going to come in the form of Pierre Poilievre, who's the leader of the Conservative Party, the official opposition of the government. But people say there might not be an election for a couple of years, and they're correct. There might not be one for another year and a half, 2 years. So, what is Pierre Poilievre gonna have to face in the meantime? Trudeau's cabinet, unfortunately, which if you watch it, which we're going to watch, there are some people that are not trustworthy. There is no way you would trust these people with anything except leading our country. Like, it's so ridiculous. Wait until you start seeing some of the things that they say, how they answer their questions, how they handle themselves. It's embarrassing as a Canadian that these are the most important leaders of our country. The polls say Pierre Poilievre is the guy, that's coming. He's going to be next. He's probably going to win a majority government. That's what the polls say. We'll have to wait and see. Until then, these are the obstacles, the people, the cabinet of Trudeau that are the sinisters. They're the worst. Once you see them, you'll agree with me. Let's take a peek at who some of those people are. They're not great. Up first, we have Anita Anan. She's the president of the Treasury Board, and our Treasury Board is in bad shape. She was elected in 2019, representing Oakville, Ontario. Watch how she acts and listen to this voice. It's a problem. She's an issue.
The Honourable President of the Treasury Board.
Mr. Speaker, let's be clear and accurate. Much of that spending referred to by the Leader of the Opposition was provincial in nature, not federal, Mr. Speaker. And in addition, unlike the Conservatives, Mr. Speaker, we actually have a plan to help Canadians, especially vulnerable Canadians, and the Deputy Prime Minister will table additional aspects of that plan tomorrow in the fall economic statement. But let's be clear, we are here for Canadians every single step of the way, unlike the party opposite that votes against every single time, Mr. Speaker.
What was the question again?
Doctors and nurses are already living in their cars, and the IMF says Canada's mortgage holders are the most at risk of crisis. Will the Prime Minister finally accept my common sense plan and announce the date and the plan to balance the budget and bring down interest rates on Canadian mortgages so people don't lose their homes?
Up next, we have Arif Virani. He's the Attorney General, Minister of Justice for Canada, another lawyer from Ontario, and boy oh boy, this guy. Just take a peek at this.
Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Mr. Speaker, when it comes to food security, we always have to remember that the breadbasket of the world is a country called Ukraine. And I'm going to use the title of that country deliberately, because when you can't...
What was the question again?
Just a little bit so we can get through this. Interpretation is a challenge, a lot of cases when there's lots of noise in the chamber. The Honourable Minister of Justice and Attorney General, 21 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, I use the term Ukraine deliberately because when I hear somebody who aspires to lead this nation incapable of saying the term Ukraine and calling that nation that is fighting for its very existence a faraway foreign land, I find that not just disrespectful to our ally, I find that actually immoral. And we on this side of the House will stand by Ukraine.
What was the question again?
Mr. Speaker, my question to those Liberals is simple. Do they expect him to raise costs or to cut back production so that Canadians are forced to import food from polluting foreign jurisdictions?
If it walks like a duck and it talks like a duck, perhaps it's a duck. Mark Holland walks like a clown. He's the Minister of Health. He's another MP from Ontario. Check him out. Gaslighting Canadians.
Health. In a time of great global difficulty, in a time where people all over the world are finding things hard, there are those that stand up and provide solutions and talk about how we make things better. And I want to recognize the NDP in stepping forward and talking about solutions, about talking about answers. When we saw the Conservatives voting against dental care, voting against support for seniors, voting against support for persons with disability, voting against our children who need dental support. Shame on them, Mr. Speaker, and congratulations to any party that stands up for ideas and getting things done in this country.
What was the question again?
Can the minister explain the impact of the NDP dental plan on Canadians?
You didn't hear it from me, but Karina Gould has an alien baby growing inside of her, and she happens to be the leader of the federal government in the House of Commons. She's a disaster, guys. She's not the worst, but she's pretty close.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
On this side of the House, we are proud to stand up for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, last week what the Conservatives did is they voted consistently against measures that not only make life more affordable for Canadians, but help them in their time of need. 988 that was just launched with regards to suicide prevention. What did the Conservatives do? They voted against it. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to supporting victims of gender-based violence, what did the Conservatives do? Voted against it. The list goes on, Mr. Speaker. That is irresponsible. That is reckless. And quite frankly, these are right-wing extreme politics from the United States that we don't want here in Canada.
Again, what was the question?
Now we know Canada has fallen 4 places to 62nd out of 67 countries in the world.
Shameful.
After they've tried to impose this carbon tax. Instead of quadrupling a tax that has failed, why won't they axe the tax and invest in technology instead?
If you can't keep it lightheaded. This is Sean Fraser, the Minister of Housing and Infrastructure. He's also probably just a dumb person, but he's with this Liberal cabinet. It's an issue, guys.
Minister for Housing and Infrastructure.
Mr. Speaker, it's interesting to listen to this version of revisionist history of the honourable member's time as a minister responsible for housing. If we actually go back and look at the numbers, you're going to see that he actually had housing starts less than 200,000 a year. Mr. Speaker, this morning we've seen data that shows that we're on pace to build more than 256,000 this year. If we want to compare apples to apples, Mr. Speaker, we're going to make a difference. Do you like apples? We're going to beat his numbers. How do you like them apples?
What was the question again?
Scotiabank says deficits are driving mortgage rates up 2%. That works out to $700 per month. While carpenters and nurses are already living in their cars, and the IMF says Canada's mortgage holders are the most at risk of crisis. Will the Prime Minister finally accept my common sense plan and announce the date and the plan to balance the budget and bring down interest rates on Canadian mortgages so people don't lose their homes?
And now behind the carbon tax, we have Stephen Gibo, who's the Minister of the Environment. He's a disaster, a tree hugger, a declared socialist. He's living in the wrong country, in the wrong government. Again, another issue.
The Honourable Minister of Environment.
Ironic, Mr. Speaker, coming from a party that voted against supporting chicken farms just last week, Mr. Speaker. But, you know, is it radical to be in favor of fighting for the future of our kids and grandkids? No. I don't think so. Is it radical to ensure that we invest in jobs of the 21st century in our communities across the country? I don't think so, Mr. Speaker. What is radical is to ignore one of the world's most defining issues of our time and have nothing to say about climate change. This is unacceptable. This is immoral, Mr. Speaker.
What was the question again?
But instead, farmers are left paying this punishing carbon tax. A chicken farm pays $15,000 for one barn this year in carbon tax. Wow. And after this ideologically obsessed minister quadruples the carbon tax, it'll be $60,000 for one chicken farm. What is this farmer supposed to do to pay it? Raise prices or force Canadians to import their food from polluting foreign farms?
Last but not least, we have Christia Freeland. She's a Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, and the absolute worst, or best, if the category is most likely to. She just sucks. I don't even know how to explain it. She's frustrating to watch. You'll see it. You've seen her before. She's annoying and so condescending. She's got a lot of issues. It's a problem.
Minister of Finance and Deputy Prime Minister of Canada.
Mr. Speaker, last week, the Conservatives voted against Operation Unifier, which is about direct military support for Ukraine. They've also voted against our free trade agreement with Ukraine. When we look at the extreme right south of the border parroting Putin's lines, we used to think that could never happen in Canada. But it is happening here, Mr. Speaker. On this side of the House, we are proud to say, Slava Ukraini.
The Honourable.
What was the question again?
People lined up at food banks and 9 out of 10 young people unable to afford a home. Now they want to quadruple the carbon tax just as we learn that Canadians will be forced to spend another $700 just to feed themselves. Will they follow our common sense plan to axe the tax?
So those are some Liberal cabinet ministers to keep your eye on. They're tricky and they're not out for the best things for all of Canada. I don't believe, as a voter, that's all. I just don't see it. I don't trust them. I think they're up to something else, not some conspiracy theorist, except that I do have a theory. They're up to something else. That's about it. From my 3 months of watching politics, I am just now very suspicious of this Liberal government, crossing my fingers for Canada and Canadians. I care about us. I have a different mindset than our current government and our current government setup. I'm not a fan of it at all. It's so hard to change. Try to make a change in the federal government. It's quite a work. But we need a new type of leadership, and fingers crossed that's coming, because these times have been tough. So we're going to wrap it up right there. I'm Aaron. This is Question Period Canada. We're trying to learn about Canadian politics, and we are, and sharing that with everybody else. The way that I see it, I'm not so strange that other Canadians cannot relate. We cannot relate to this federal government and what they've been doing to us. Like and subscribe, trying to have a good time with Canadian politics right here, We'll catch you next video. Try to stay warm and have something healthy to eat.